Usually when I'm improving OpenStreetMap, it's to make a better map for my own life, for navigation and for things like using that data for innovation, different apps and things. But there's an important use of maps, not just improving kind of modern lives, but actually at the root of it saving lives. And a lot of humanitarian work depends on maps. So today I'm going to talk about that. So humanitarian organisations working in different ways do use maps. Sometimes they don't have the maps available to them. So they might have a map such as this one in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and that's the best they've got. No roads, just vaguely how the towns connect to each other. And maps are really important for healthcare and such. So the classic example of this is 1854 in London. There was a disease, a lot of people unwell from cholera. So John Snow plotted where people were dying with this disease. And you can see there's clear hotspots. There's one building that has about 15 deaths associated with it, and that's helpful. You can probably work out from here where there are roads, but then it's with other data when you put on those roads, but also where the water pumps were. You can see that there was one water pump, quite key kind of location next to where all these deaths were, and they discovered that cholera is a disease that spreads through the water. So once that pump was out of use, the deaths calmed down, and that's still used today by organisations. Kind of when diseases come in, people like the British Red Cross and Doctors Without Borders will ask, where did you come from to come to this health centre? And people may have travelled miles, so it's really important to know where they came from, so then they can track, this disease is spreading there, kind of we need to sort out, improve the water supply, or maybe redirect our resources there. And likewise, when earthquakes or flooding, natural disasters and man-made kind of civil disruption happens, it's helpful to have good maps so you can see where the roads are damaged, where the people are. But the John Snow example shows us that even if we're not there, kind of contributing information that we can do remotely can be really helpful, and then the people on the ground can kind of use that to update it, to name the roads or plot where the health centres are and different resources. And sometimes they just use this for planning. If we knew where the houses and buildings were in a region, then the mapping teams, the GIS teams of those organisations can estimate population a lot better, and they can direct their resources to those places. And so this all kind of started about 10 years ago when the Haiti earthquake happened, and aerial imagery companies that normally these aid agencies will pay thousands of pounds to get any aerial imagery or any maps. The aerial imagery companies using satellites actually kind of gave this away for free on the proviso that people editing OpenStreetMap, contributing to OpenStreetMap, can use the aerial imagery. And it formed these organisations. It formed the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team and the Missing Maps Collective, who now help organisations when there's an event, whether it's something expected, such as weather patterns or unexpected disasters. They can activate and use a system called the Hot Tasking Manager to ask mappers around the world, hey, we need help here, can you map it? So let's take a look at that with a project that I'm going to help contribute to from my home. So this evening I've joined a online Missing Maps event hosted by Missing Maps London, and we're looking at South Sudan, the COVID vaccination project. So I've opened up the number that we've been asked to work on, 11145, and quite a lot of it's been mapped already. Actually, you can see this is the area they want to help mapping the buildings for this project, divided into squares. And I'm not going to do a full tutorial. It is better, if you're new to this, to attend a Missing Maps workshop. Go to their website and look at events, whether that's online or in person. And you can see all these areas here. Some of them are blue and have been mapped. And the green ones, not only have they been mapped, also an experienced mapper's come along and said, yeah, that's good. So I'm just going to click in here, and while I do that, I click Map Selected Task, and it loads it up in JOSM. If I zoom in, there's some buildings that need mapping. And while I start doing this, it gets quite simple, of just tracing buildings as I normally would. And I'm going to go through and do this. Sam Colchester, who works for the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, explained to us a bit of what we're doing here and why we're mapping South Sudan for covax.
So covax is COVID vaccination, and we were mapping South Sudan. This is actually part of a quite separate initiative to the broader covax initiative. This is part of a initiative called GIM, or the Geographic Information Management Initiative, between IMAP, Carto&G, Map Action, ALCIS, and the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. So those organizations listed there. The GIM initiative, or GIM initiative, aims to strengthen the COVID-19 vaccine rollout through geographic data, systems, and analysis in 15 low-income countries with acute humanitarian needs. And this has started off with mapping in South Sudan. And this was kind of led by Map Action. We've continued this pilot effectively in South Sudan. And this is why we've been mapping South Sudan. So far, mapped almost the whole of a region in South Sudan called Western Equatoria, in the southwest of South Sudan. So effectively, it's the GIM initiative is aware of many of the likely data gaps in many low-income countries, and with imminent COVID-19 vaccine delivery, these data gaps are problematic. So the aim is to build a portfolio of relevant data sets, and we're going to use kind of the learnings from this South Sudan pilot to assist the kind of broader rollout into the other 15 or 14 low-income countries. Yeah, so it's great you've all been mapping South Sudan today. And this data is really important to help identify priority populations and to plan efficient last mile vaccine delivery.
And if you if you go to one of these events and take a laptop to do some mapping, really recommend a mouse rather than using the laptop touchpad. Kind of for any mapping, but particularly for humanitarian stuff. You can see how I zoom in and out a lot while I do this. Now, well, in the Missing Maps event, we had about 30 people there. I know the in-person ones can be even bigger. So we used breakout rooms on the video chat. Sometimes they're different rooms in person or just different areas for if you're completely new to mapping, if you're used to using the online ID mapper or want to learn JOSM, and different groups to help different learning. So while Sam was in one of those groups, training and equipping and helping some people, I had a chat with Andrew Braye, who works for the British Red Cross in their GIS team. So although this project in South Sudan is organised by the HOT, Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, and in collaboration with the UN, Andrew from the British Red Cross was able to talk a bit about how data gets used, why I'm just mapping these buildings, and how kind of he'd often use them in projects that the Red Cross use.
Buildings, everything gets a lot more nuanced, and also and this is the bit that I can sort of talk to, but I can't talk to the specific examples as much. As soon as you have buildings, you can do a lot, including ask the next couple of questions. From a Missing Maps perspective, the people that come to mapathons, so your first time mappers, are less useful at mapping that nuance. So you've got the validation aspect, you've got roads, you've got more nuance around what kind of buildings, or like grouping them by certain things and stuff. And far more kind of, is this data fit to task? Like you say, a population estimate. But once you have the buildings, you can sort of, from your population estimate, you can do the next number of things. And often there's a big time difference between kind of your buildings you want up front, which is the whole point of Missing Maps, and then you can do the other stuff. So logistics might be, months, years down the line, but you've now got a far more targeted intervention.
Right. Yeah.
That thing.
And I guess it's easy then for people in the field can go, well, I know there's buildings here because Missing Maps map them. Can you help me say the roads to get to these buildings?
And often that's kind of, so this is the field GIS component, which will be, so you've got a logistician in the field and they would upload their GPS tracks and they would start confirming, yes, road, path, and then make that a printable map to be able to share with others. So kind of, the whole point is to get it out of GIS people's hands and into kind of operational use in different forms. So if you get it to the epidemiologist or you get it to the camp logistician,
we go. And so that's all the buildings mapped in there, and they've not asked me to map anything else. That's because there's another project. There's a few projects here, but I'm going to upload that. And then going back to the project, I mark it as mapped, yes, and submit that task. And so that means once that area has been fully mapped and validated, then Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team can tell the UN that that's mapped, it's got all the buildings in there. They can then start to work out population and where they might need to, how many vaccines and where they might need them, which is going to be very important. Lots of things changing for various reasons in South Sudan, people displaced within the country through kind of war and also through flooding. But they'll know where the people are, and then as kind of Andrew explained, kind of other teams, other volunteers and GIS teams can add the roads to help the logistics of that. And they can get their maps on their GPS devices or their phones telling them where to go. And they can also use it in ways of plotting that. So it'll all go to help, which I'm sure will be much appreciated. I'm going to put some links in the description. If we see, what was it? There was, one, because COVID's quite new, but humanitarian mapping has been going on for decades, and with OpenStreetMap as a tool, it's been going on sort of 11 years now, really helpful. And so other vaccination programs have been in use, and there's a great story of how the missing maps and how maps were used for measles vaccination programs. So I'm going to put a link to that in the description. And yeah, hopefully you found it all interesting. And I might do more videos on this. Humanitarian mapping isn't my main focus. I tend to map what I find outside, but I do this from time to time in different projects. So if you're interested in some of the other ways that I talked about, I could do another video focusing on one of those and linking up with some of the people that really are using these maps to help save lives and change them in really quite substantial ways. And if you're interested, go to the Missing Maps website and join an event, find out how to map